My name is Jonathan Kane. I'm with CoGDEM, and I'm also a director of CoGas Safety. I'd like to pay tribute to Sharon for her persistence over these years. It's been, I can't imagine the struggle you've been through to get this type of justice, if that's the right word. I'd also like to say thank you also to Peter for recognizing that companies and organizations do have a duty to say sorry and to try to put things right, and belatedly that has now happened, and I'd like to say thank you very much for doing that. Just to pick up on Neil's point, I think that the DCLG who wrote this legislation have put in place a statutory review after 2 years, so one would hope that people in this room and others would apply pressure to make that possible change, because it is logical and necessary. The other thing I'd like to do is to pay tribute to Linda and to her colleague in Parliament, Catherine Steeler, MEP for Scotland, both of whom have campaigned very effectively in a very diffuse environment. And Catherine's team have done a superb job making amendments to a primary piece of legislation called the Gas Appliance Regulation, which comes out, I believe, in January of next year when it's voted on by Parliament. That's an example of asking the Commission and the Council to review decisions previously made and to revise them without taking the document out of scope. The point about that being the gas appliance manufacturers will be under a more significant duty, a clearer duty, to explain the dangers of their product if they exist and what type of person should be authorized to do the work of installation or service or repair. The final point I'd like to make is that the situation in Europe is incredibly difficult to deal with. You have in Holland and in Belgium well-known numbers of statistics of people dying from carbon monoxide. And when you look at the causes of it, it's mostly, some of it's due to ignorance by the consumer, not being aware. A lot of it's down to the fault of the installer or the engineer. And the UK does have best practice in this respect. We may not have the best heating engineers, and there will always be moments of alarm, but at least every 5 years they are brought back, as it were, to a driving school. They do have to pass a driving test, and that gives the industry an opportunity to update them on the various initiatives that have transpired in the last 5 years. For example, the almost universal installation of condensing boilers, which are much harder to install and service than a traditional boiler, which most installers wouldn't necessarily have appreciated. It's that kind of methodology that is incredibly hard to get across in markets like Holland or in Belgium, where, of course, you live, and more people die in Belgium than the population size of London than they do in the UK from this issue, as a comparison. So it's just going to be a very hard slog. The Dutch Safety Board, for example, is releasing a report on CO in either this week or next, and it will probably conclude that it's usually down to installer issues. I very much hope that we can bang the drum for an equivalent national registration scheme and competency testing as we have now in the UK.